On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 1967. We're going to be taking a look at the Spencer Davis Group, and they're going to be performing Gimme Some Lovin'. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So, we're going to be jumping into this with the pitch monitoring software on screen, and I will be jumping into it. So, as always, there's a link in the description below to the original video, so you guys can watch it there if you want to watch it the whole way through. So, let's jump into the video and see how they get on. I'm just going to jump in here. This performance being live and hitting some of the notes that Steve Winwood is hitting here is just crazy, because this is the kind of vocal performance that really shows off vocal endurance, range, belting in chest voice. He's really laying into every single note. And let me just put this in perspective, because he would have been 17 or 18 years of age during this performance. I think when they recorded it, he was about 17. So you've effectively got this kid going up on stage and absolutely nailing a vocal like this. I mean, it really is out of this world. When we have a look at the pitch monitoring software, the whole song is right up here. Look at this, a B4 and a C5. We've got the ranges up on screen so we can see exactly where that is. So as we have a little look down, our C5, the male tenor high C, is here, and you know, top end of the male tenor range is A4, so we are technically above that. Even though the C5 is referred to as the male tenor high C, we've got the B4 is here, just a semitone off, and the B4 in this song is just consistent vocally. The way that Steve's hitting it, he's nailing it, but it's relentless. There's nowhere here to have a rest. The verse is at that B4 pitch. It's all the same verse into the chorus. So the other thing to look out for is Steve's face, because he's nailing these notes, but he's totally relaxed. So you can tell that he's just got great vocal technique. When you're listening to somebody sing at this kind of range, when you're listening to a guy, you might notice that they're straining, that they're pushing their voice and they're reaching for the notes. But it is so relaxed, and Steve's just giving us this performance at such a young age, but it sounds like someone's voice who is just a seasoned professional, maybe been doing it 20 or 30 years. So it's amazing just the level that Steve was at, I mean musically in general, but just vocally, to have this kind of voice and such authority at such a young age. We'll jump back into the song right at the beginning, because what I love about this song is its simplicity. I mean, the bass riff is just an octave, just playing one note and going the octave below and just repeating that. But it's all about the feel, the groove, and the way that this song is put together is really simplistic, but that's what's so good about it. And just quickly, I want to mention the story behind this song, because it's an interesting story that they were asked by the record label, and they were having a lot of pressure put on them by their manager, because obviously the record label said, we need another hit. Obviously, every record label would love to have constant hits, but they just thought that the band could produce them ad infinitum. But that meant that they got in the studio and they had a day to come up with a hit, and they were obviously feeling the pressure of it, so they set up at about 11 in the morning and they just started messing around. And this is the story as told by Muff Winwood, Steve's brother, who's on bass here. We can see his right hand here in close-up. So they started messing around and they just came up with this, and Muff said that Steve just started shouting out randomly, and then they put lyrics to the shouting, and they just felt like this was going to be a hit, that it just felt good. So they had all of this just got down in about an hour. After about half an hour, they had most of it, and then just rehearsed it a little bit. So by 12 o'clock, by midday, they had this song, and they went to the cafe. And their manager went to the studio to see how they were getting on, and of course nobody was there. The instruments were just left against the walls on the floor, and he went to find them at the cafe, and they said, literally, he shouted, how can you do this? Like, what are you doing? We've got to write a hit and we've only got a day to do it. And they said, don't worry about it, we've already done it. So then they went into the studio, they played it, and yeah, sure enough, he was blown away, and this was the song that turned into that hit. And they actually played it on the evening that they wrote it to a live crowd at one of their gigs, and it went down really well. So then they knew that they had a huge hit on their hands. So we've just got this bass riff, which is just the G being repeated an octave apart, and the Hammond organ. We've got to mention that sound because it fills in so much frequency. And the line that Steve's playing is really cool as well. It's memorable, it's melodic, and you don't need anything more than that really in this whole performance, apart from the chorus, where we do get an ascension with that bass to just give us a slightly different sight on the journey of the song. But let's jump into it and enjoy it all over again. What I have done is just bring up Steve's lead vocal in the mix so we can hear it a little bit more clearly, but we'll still be able to hear the instrumentation. And just quickly, you can see that the pitch monitoring software is picking up a bit of the organ here, and there's the G4, and you can see that it is stuck to the line, because this is what happens with a keyboard, piano. It is exactly in tune, and this is 440 hertz tuning we're talking about here. So when we do those other videos that sometimes pitch correction or auto tune has been used, and I say that it's directly over the line, that's because it's turning the voice into a keyboard, into a piano, effectively, so that it's so accurate it's just stuck to the line. So good example here, but let's get back into it.
People knocking doors, they wanna say more. Let me in, baby, I don't know what you got. Give me some loving. Give me some loving every day. Yes, I know.
I love that little bluesy line at the end. Just had to hear that. So, is that little bluesy flick up there. But going back to have a look at the pitch that we've got going on here. Great example of that in the chorus. And pretty much as we go back, you'll be able to see all over the place. We've got this B4 being hit. We're in and around that A sharp 4. Just going forward where we have the chorus.
Give me some loving.
Listen to that B4. I'm trying to say he is all over that note. He's not going into a light head voice. He is belting that out.
Give me some loving.
And no strain at all in his face or his neck. It's just so easy.
Give me some loving.
And finally, look at the pitch. We are pretty much bang on with our B4 every time we go to it. So he's just got it nailed on pitch-wise. The most accurate one was probably this first one. And then, you know, I mean, the amount that we're missing the note is minimal. You're not going to be able to hear the difference between these B4s by ear. It's just going to sound pitch perfect. And when we look at it, we can see that the notes ever so slightly vary, but that's the point. Great singers don't hit the lines all the time dead on. They're in and around the lines, and it just sounds the best that it can do naturally without being snapped to notes, because once that happens it doesn't sound natural. This is the great thing about this song and this live performance. It's just the feel of it, and everyone's into it. At the beginning, I also love the face that Pete York, the drummer, makes, because it's just before the riff comes in. Let me see if I can take it back and see if I can find where that... Here we go. It's almost like he knows that it's all about to kick off because the Hammond organ is about to kick in with this particular riff. But you can tell that they're enjoying it. And just shouting out over the microphone, you might be able to hear in the background, it's either Pete or it might be Spencer or it might be Muff in the background, just shouting during the performance, so you can tell that there's an energy there. And that really comes across. And it reminds me of performances that you would have by Chicago, where you would hear them shouting on stage and just getting into it. They're not singing into the mic, but they're just really involved in the performance emotionally, putting all their energy into it. And it makes such a difference when you've got a band who are enjoying themselves but just getting into it and putting everything that they have into the performance. So we'll jump back into the performance where we left it and we'll watch it to the end.
Well, my head is smart and I'm the sun. You make us happy because you're around. Then I did nothing went too good. Now I'm gonna relax like everybody should. And I'm so let me. So let me. Come on now. You gotta give me some loving. Give me some loving. Give me some loving. Every night and every day. Give me some loving. I'm feeling so good. Give me some loving. Yes, I know. Give me some loving. I'm so good without you, baby. Give me some loving. I can't do nothing without you, baby. Yes, I know. Give me some loving. Woo! Give me some loving. Yes, I am. Give me some loving. Yes, I know. Give me some loving. Yes, I know. Give me some loving.
And there we have it, and the crowd goes absolutely mild at the end. But what a great live performance that is. And I think you guys know what I'm going to be pointing out next, because there are a few notes where Steve just releases into his head voice. And his head voice is so clean, so relaxed. We'll just take it back and have another listen to it.
I can't do nothing without you, baby. Yes, I know. Give me some loving.
And it's interesting in that, because I've taken the backing down, when we hear this in isolation, it might actually be a reinforced falsetto that Steve is using here and not a head voice, because when he takes it down, you can start to hear a little bit of air in the sound. Let's have another listen. Yeah, right at the end there, I mean, we're going down to the A sharp 4, but the F5 is where we're at. And look at the accuracy on the pitch monitoring software here. Just bang on that F5. And, I mean, that's a seriously high note. But if we are thinking that he goes into his falsetto and reinforces it, then, I mean, it's even more impressive because he's got that tonal consistency to his falsetto as well, and I'm sure that he could hit that note in a clean head voice and it would sound really similar to this, but only because when we descend we get that sound of air. We'll just take it back and have a listen to another note that Steve sings where it sounds like, again, he's just flipping up into that head voice / falsetto, but we'll see what it is.
You gotta give me some lovin'. Give me some lovin'.
It does sound like there's a little bit of air in there, and that was the E5, by the way, so just a semitone lower than the one that we just looked at. But it's at the top of the screen here, the pitch monitoring software actually missed it. But when we come back down to the D5, there is a little hint of air in the sound. And it sounds like once he has sung that phrase, he's not then exhaling. He hasn't got any air left over. So it might be that, I mean, falsetto is naturally going to get rid of your air very quickly. But it's just this reinforced sound that he's got. And it's great because in videos recently, we've been looking at the Bee Gees and Barry Gibb, the way that he threw his voice up to that falsetto sound and reinforced it. So we've got a similar thing going on here. He just does it naturally, and you can tell that he's just such a gifted vocalist, musician, songwriter, you name it. But just being able to have access to all of these different notes with your voice, I mean, loads of singers, including myself, would love to be able to go through this range with the comfort and ease that Steve does and be able to add all of this rasp into the sound, B4 and C5, which is just crazy high up there in the male tenor range, counter tenor range, really technically, when we're talking about the E5 and that D5 that was the tone below. But it's great to have a look at this performance, and this is one of those songs that is one of my youth, and it's been used on so many movies and TV shows. It's great to see it being performed live, especially when the band is so young. And when I say the band, I mean Steve, because he must have been 17 or 18 performing this live, and it depends what month this performance was, and I don't have access to that information. It's just labelled as being 1967. But anyway, keep those suggestions and requests coming in the comments section below, and let me know what you guys think. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!